This episode of A Glassblower's Companion is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of December 2019, Mountain Glass has a couple sales. Right now they have their special sale, their select seconds 50% off. Special sale, select seconds 50% if I can say that 5 times fast. Right now they have select Boro, North Star, and Troutman seconds at 50% off. No coupon code needed. Get these seconds while they are still in stock. They also have their Glass Alchemy's Classic Firsts 30% off sale. And again, no coupon code needed. Just go through Mountain Glass's selection of the Glass Alchemy Classics and you'll find what is still available. And for all you beautiful soft glass nerds, they have their Double Helix 15% off. All you have to do is use the code HELIX, HELIX at checkout, and you'll save 15% off Double Helix. And don't forget to check out their weekly sales as well as their kiln sales, torch sales, and everything else going on at Mountain Glass. Also, Mountain Glass is officially open on the West Coast. They are over there in Eugene, Oregon. They are open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. To check Eugene stock or for Eugene pickup orders, just please call their Asheville number at 866-LAMPWORK. And I'll have all that information in the show notes. In the meantime, go to mountainglass.com for any more information. That's mountainglass.com. This episode is also brought to you by the Flow Magazine. Have your art featured in the Flow Magazine's Spring 2020 Nature issue. The Spring 2020 issue of the Flow Magazine will explore the wonders of nature, everything from the tiniest microbes, marine animals, and wildlife to global environments, including geological formations, plants and trees, and bodies of water, large and small. Gallery entries, general interest stories, and health, safety, or technical articles, plus tutorials are welcomed. Any skill level submissions, from beginner and intermediate to advanced, are accepted for consideration for beads, sculptures, marbles, paperweights, vessels, and mixed media. They look forward to hearing from you. Please email 3 to 5 high-resolution digital images of your art that are at least 300 dpi, along with submission forms to Maureen James at the Flow Magazine. I'll have her email in the information here in the show notes for you guys. This is a great way for you to get your work published into a magazine. And as far as I understand now, the Flow has officially gone digital with the up cost in printing and paper. It's going to be more affordable for them to not only continue to operate as a company, but to grow as well by making this a completely just online digital media. I believe there are some talks that if you want to have it done in paper, that it's possible to have it done, but I don't hold me to that. I think they're really just going to strictly hold themselves to becoming just a digital online magazine. Nowadays, with all of us on our phones and tablets and computers and everything else, it's a little easier for us to access their articles and stuff. And again, it's going to help them cut costs so that they can continue to grow. They've taken over the webinar series that Glasscraft used to do, and they're now continuing those webinar series online. So any kind of tutorials, any lessons that you can think of, there's a shit ton of information out there. So again, go to theflowmagazine.com. You can still save 10% on your annual subscription if you have not yet subscribed to their magazine. Just use promo code WISEGUY. And I'll have all the information and links in the show notes for you to submit all of your work to the Flow Magazine for their Spring 2020 Nature issue. And again, go to theflowmagazine.com. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to A Glassblower's Companion, Episode 8. How are you? I hope your holidays are going well and you had a happy Thanksgiving if you're living here in the United States. Otherwise, I hope you're staying warm in your studios because it is getting chilly out there. Even down here in old, sunny, shiny Florida, it's been pretty chilly here, even though it was like 85 today, but it's up and down. That's one reason why us Floridians down here are always sick, because it's hot one day, and it's cold the next, and then it's hot for 5 days, and then it's cold for 4 days. It is annoying. But today's a special episode. We have Eli Mazet making a return. His last episode he was on was 177, where he shared his origins, some insights into the American shot glass and the history of the shot glass, which was really fascinating. And him and I, behind the scenes, have been chit-chatting about some future episodes, really covering a lot of historical aspects in glass. We talk about in this episode, which is kind of intriguing to me too, is that this industry that we're in, the pipe industry, for those that are not pipe artists or just glass artists in general, glass has been around for centuries. But the pipe industry itself has really been growing over the last, say, 30 years. I've been in this industry now since 99. I consider myself to be an overall glass artist. The fact that I do work over at Disney and have the opportunity to create works of art there, and I don't have to do pipes on a full-time basis, even though I still am a piper at heart, and I still love this community and seeing the growth and wanting to help you guys out there. But in general, this industry has been around for roughly about 30 years. And Eli and I get into a conversation talking about some of the origins of the histories, which basically stems back to his documentary that him and Joaquin together produced and have released called Pipetown USA, which is basically the origins of the pipe industry and the foundation, starting back with Bob Snodgrass. Their initial focus when they first started talking about this documentary was just to strictly focus and do a documentary on Bob Snodgrass. But they really both together understood that this community is more vast than just a singular person, and Bob himself even recognizes that and talks about that in his chit-chat. But Bob is still instrumental into, in a sense, setting a foundation for this industry and for the pipe culture. Not only with just the way of life, because a lot of this all started on the Dead Tour and selling your art and your wares on the Dead Tour, which then led to the Dead Tour stopping, and they needed a place to sell their glass, so they started hitting retail stores and etc. But the culmination of one person starting a little thing that has grown into what it is now, it's incredible. But there hasn't been a lot of history covered in this industry. Unlike other industries out there, there's a lot of history that's been written, whether it's the farming or the in agriculture or the industrial industry, all that kind of stuff. So that being said, Eli and I behind the scenes have been talking the importance for us to start documenting, and he has been documenting through books. Again, starting off back with the American Shot Glass and just the Shot Glass, his 2 books he's got out. And then him and Joaquin together came and started collaborating and thinking about some ideas. And Joaquin had a bunch of past footage from stuff he was doing through Glasscraft, which if you haven't listened to his episode yet, he was back on episode 6, I believe. Him sharing his story and his journey into getting involved in this community. But anyways, long story short, Pipetown USA does cover the origins, and it goes up to a certain time period. I mean, it comes up to modern time. But there's such a vast amount of artists and origins that we all come from that, again, Eli and I have talked about the ideas of starting to create some kind of timeline, family tree, historical type of thing. So look for from future episodes that I'm going to be talking about and putting some posts out, because ideally I do want to start creating a family tree. I think it'd be fun to start off with the old Snodgrass and start with him and branch out and really see where we all come from. I know myself personally, I learned from Daniel Sharp, my pipe techniques. Some of my basic fundamentals I learned from him. He was up in South Fulton County up in Georgia. Daniel learned from Sky. Sky learned from Bob Snodgrass, I believe, is how that works. And I don't know Sky's last name. I know him and his wife at one point in time were up in Gainesville, Florida, I believe, and they had a school bus. Some of those that of you might know him. I would love to find out. Those that do, reach out to me, let me know. I'll have my email in the show notes, or you can just hit me up on Instagram at the Glassblower's Companion, or just Glassblower's Companion on Instagram. Send me a DM, because again, ideally, it's going to take a long time to do this, and with anything that's done well, it takes a long time, including this documentary. But just on a side note, I would love to begin, and Eli is the same way. We both want to kind of start this kind of concept of creating a family tree. But that being said, I've watched Pipetown USA several times, and I've gotten a lot of different things out of it, a lot of amazing quotes, and just seeing the inspiration and the influence that has come through the generations of Glass. This documentary doesn't just cover the OGs; it covers also some other artists that are newer that have been behind the torch maybe 3 to 5 years, and it's really fascinating. But what I do enjoy the most out of this is that it comes from the perspective of Joaquin, who is the one who's more or less documenting this footage and this story. The artists, including Eli, who are being interviewed and talking in this in the documentary, are sharing their stories and sharing their knowledge, but they're sharing it to Joaquin. And Joaquin asks some questions and asks some pretty hard-hitting questions that reveals some things that some of these artists may have never shared with anybody before, which I think is pretty awesome. So definitely hope you definitely enjoy this interview and this talk with me and Eli. We do kind of go all over the place, not just focusing on Pipetown USA, but the core of this is about Pipetown USA. And if you want to go back and listen to my interview with Joaquin and hear his origins and how he got involved in this project, starting back with Dave Winship and Glasscraft and doing the demonstration or the online tutorials and the webinars that they were doing back then, and just the importance of video and documentation as well. So yeah. Other than that, there's been a lot of things going on. I know we got Glass Vegas is coming up in January. I've been talking with them folks behind the scenes. Looks like if everything is going as planned, I'm going to be up there myself. I'm going to bring some merch, hopefully a couple of different things, but I'm going to mainly be there to document the trade show from a perspective of a first-time trade show person, myself. And the goal is to really, because 2020 is going to be a big year for this show. There's a lot of things. I know I've said that in the past about this past year. I wasn't expecting to have to move and uproot myself twice. And then also meet my fiance, and it's just 2019 was an amazing year, amazing year for progress for a lot of things, not only for me as an individual and personally, but just things within, just kind of some focus, I guess, with what I'm doing here, because this does take time. I don't have a lot of time to put into this, but now that my schedule at work has changed, now I'm working 5 days a week instead of 4 days, but my days are shorter. But what I'm doing is I'm getting stuff done in the mornings before I head in, and then I'm also working during my lunch break. And I mean, literally, I'm writing every day. I had to have an hour for my lunch that I take, and my laptop's out, and I'm writing stuff up for the content for this podcast and for the online stuff I'm going to be doing. I know YouTube right now is in the middle of doing some different things and changes with their what you can post with this whole new kid thing. There's a name for it, which I can't remember what the hell it's called, and I should know. But they're getting pretty strict on making your stuff either kid-friendly or not kid-friendly. So there's going to be a point in time here where eventually most of the content that I'm going to be posting up on YouTube will probably become private at some point in time. I'm not really sure how I'm going to work it out, but I want to make sure that you do have access to all this stuff. I'll probably have access through the Patreon page. And as of right now, I have no patrons, which I understand because I haven't really been active in there at all. I got to a point to where I was being active somewhat consistently, but for those that were contributing to the show, I didn't really feel like I was giving them their value, even though this podcast is part of what the Patreon's for to help support the show. But having not posted that many podcast episodes and etc., I didn't really, I understood why people backed out. But 2020 is going to be a big focus on more content and exclusive content that will be accessible through the Patreon page. And it's for as little as $1 a month, you'll have access to the videos and stuff. The online course is still moving forward. A lot of things are happening, so I don't want to get into too much. But yeah, I didn't take any notes for this opening, so I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants here. Just woke up a little bit ago and about to get my day started here. My birthday is coming up. Today is the 13th that I'm recording this, and my birthday is on the 16th. So Julie has some plans for us for tonight. So I don't have a whole lot of time today to work on my shop, but I will be getting some stuff done as well as getting this out for you guys. So before I keep rambling, I'm going to let you go. Hope you do enjoy this episode with Eli Mazet. And again, go check out Pipetown USA. I'll have all the links in the show notes. They're going to be exposing this to the nation here pretty soon, and look forward to it. So until next time, don't forget to share this show with your friends. Subscribe on iTunes if you have not yet, and any other podcast catchers that you listen to. If you can please leave us a review, a written review and a star review would be fantastic. It just helps expose the show, shows people out there that is being listened to, including the algorithms of the hires in the podcasting lore of whatever you want to call it. It's very helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you on the next episode. Take care of yourselves. Love you. Peace. What's going on, Eli? Welcome back to the show, brother.
Hey there, Jason. How you doing today?
Good, man. Good. Finally got you on here again. We got Pipetown USA that just came out. I had Joaquin on last month, talking about his perspective and his involvement in this film, the documentary series. Well, I guess not really a series, but the documentary of Pipetown USA, covering the Eugene glass scene and like the origins of the pipe. And I was really fascinated early on, I guess like a year ago almost now, seeing the beginnings of this, you guys doing this, and Joaquin's posts on Instagram, and just the production side of things, which I'm always intrigued by, and filming glass and whatever, with my involvement, creating content and stuff. And got me really interested in seeing what you guys were doing, and I started following along, and then I reached out and got my own personal screening of this film, and got to bring Joaquin on, and now we got you on, man, to talk about Pipetown USA and your involvement in it, but also some kind of, just some talks and insights into this film. So I appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah, man.
And you were back on 177 was was the last episode that you were on, and here we are, almost at 250.
Oh my goodness! And a big shout out to you, Jason, because I've listened to almost every episode, and it's something that we listen to in the shop, and it's something, as everybody should give it a go. We've been listening to music this whole time and just rocking the music. It's just such a great perspective of Glassblower's personalities and characteristics out there that really kind of can inspire you while you're working.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so last we talked, you were sharing the history of the shot glass, and I know you're, you still do the fairs, if the Sunday market, I guess the farmers market you're doing there in your hometown, and you're not really a pipe maker, you're a glass artist in a sense, and also you love to dig up history and things behind the scenes. So I guess initially on, like, what got you inspired and to start sharing the story of the Eugene glass scene?
Well, I am a pipe maker. I was originally a pipe maker, and my brother worked for JBD. My brother was one of Jerome Baker Design's like star artists, and I had a friend from high school that also worked for JBD, and I was born and raised in Eugene, and I live only about 10 blocks from Bob Snodgrass. So early in my glass career, and my older brother started in 1997, and I started watching him right away. But I eventually got into it, and I learned about this guy, Bob Snodgrass. At the time, Bob had a little tool and a little supply shop at his house, and of course, I heard about this legend, and I looked it up in the phone book. I found Bob Snodgrass. I went over to his house, and the first thing I did was I met his apprentice, which is Hugh. And he was just a great guy. And it was my first interaction with Bob Snodgrass, probably in like 2000, 2001. And I went over there, and I was just like, man, I'm hanging around with this legend. It's only my first year in glass, and the guy lives right down the street from me.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
So, yeah, I was born in the right place for my career. Like my brother says on Pipetown, I could have been born in or lived in Wyoming, and I wouldn't have had those resources with JBD, Cascade, Sky Glass, all Winship, Glasscraft, all these glass artists around me. And at one time in the early 2000s, Winship had 6,000 glass blowers on his mailing list just in the county around us here, Lane County.
Wild.
So, yeah, and that's why, that's why this film Pipetown, kind of got started. I came up with this story as far as, I lived down the street from this guy and watched this guy through the years. And, then that's kind of how I got in. What happened was me and Joaquin were shooting a little, documentary slash how to make a shot glass over at Bob Snodgrass's house a couple years ago, that episode that we were talking about that I was on.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and I wrote a book on shot glasses and started this like movement to bring back the shot glass, and told this story about the history of the shot glass and the prohibition and why we're shooting Snodgrass. He's also in our last film that has a little interview with. So why we're shooting him, I have this epiphany, which I'm sure many people have thought this same thing. But I did a little documentary and did a book. So I'm sitting here looking at Bob Snodgrass, and this light pops in my head. We're doing a documentary on my book. And I'm like, it's the two prohibitions, the pipe and the shot glass. And I thought, no one's ever done a documentary on Bob Snodgrass. And immediately a light bulb came on, and I knew that I was going to do this story.
Hell yeah.
And I came home, and I said to Joaquin, this is crazy. We're going to do the Bob Snodgrass story. And we both kind of just lit up with a huge cheese smile,
Yeah, it's awesome.
So, yeah. And there's other people that have touched on the story. They might be from the East Coast or from Virginia or, maybe in Seattle. But I felt like I really knew the story growing up and living in Eugene. And I told the story my way, even though, and with Joaquin, of course, we did it together. It was collaboration. But the cool thing is that I just really felt like we had the heart of the story. Bob Snodgrass is the one that brought me out to Las Vegas to my most successful show where I taught for 18 years.
Hell yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been a miracle.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. I've heard a lot of people, like, just through other shows I listen to and whatever, talk about the concept of, like, when you're born, like, you could be born anywhere in the world, and the fact that you're born at this one place at this one time is, it's a sense of the ball starts rolling for your life, and then you kind of see where it takes you, and it's amazing. You have this guy around the corner from you. It's like having the fucking Loch Ness Monster or something like that, or this legend around the corner from you that really nobody knows about, nobody believes in, and does this really exist? And it's cool. And I think what's interesting with Snodgrass is the humble nature that he has, and like he doesn't like he's like, I'm not the guy that created the pipe, but he's definitely the one that he talks about the accidental find of fumed glass. It's and fuming glass, and fume's been on glass for centuries, but not in the sense of the functionality of how it's used and was started to be used then.
Right. And, fuming glass, a glass vapor deposit, it's how they made the very first color TV. So, yeah, you're right. They've been fuming and you could say kind of not fuming, but, doing vapor deposition, and fumes would come off even in soft glass. And so that was the cool story behind this, is that, yeah, they've been making pipes for 3,000 years. The oldest pipe they ever found was called the calabash, and the calabash translates into the word gourd, which is a piece of squash that they were originally smoking out of, that they found in Pharaoh tombs.
Yeah,
and so when Snodgrass, this pipe, that was like a guy picking up a torch and running with it. He didn't invent the pipe, but he was the one, and there was other people making pipes. He'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one that picked up the torch and carried it. He's the one that came up with fuming, and he's the one that really was the guy that inspired our industry. And he's known, as you know, as the godfather of glass. And one thing that I didn't, that I really love about this is that the exclamation mark is on this. I think you can feel me on this. I tell people he's the most influential glass artist in 100 years. And I think about it sometime, and I wonder, was he the most influential artist in 100 years?
Yeah,
and I only say that because people are popping up all across the world and having a glass-blowing, lamp-working studio right in their backyard, backed by hundreds of billions of dollars from the cannabis industry. So It's not like you're going to go out and make thimbles and little frogs and all that stuff abroad and have this frugalous amount of money from cannabis, the prohibition that just passed, hundreds of billions of dollars, just people ready to spend their money on and throw it out the window pretty much.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, man, it's like that he planted that seed, and now we've got this just worldwide phenomenon within a subculture, and it's like a niche within a subculture. So it's like even such a small microcosm that we all exist in. But, like I talk to people at work all the time, and, I hear about it being a dying art, and I'm always like, it's not really a dying art. I'm in this big group with like 15,000 glassblowers, and they're like, well, if you think about like the population of the world, 15,000 people is not a lot of fucking people. It's still like, 0.00001%, if that, of people in the world that do what we do, so which is amazing to be in this culture that we're in. And not even just the pipe culture, but just the glass world in general, just to say like, hey, we fucking play with this hot, dangerous, crazy shit. Like I heard this kid of the day, he's like, Mom, that's dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, I burn myself every day, because it's what we do.
I burnt myself right before I got on here to talk to you, just a small little burn.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
One thing that you kind of touched on there for a minute that I think we could even blow up more. This is crazy, Jason, is that, Snodgrass fumes the pipe. What does that do? It inspires color in borosilicate glass. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, we've got cobalt. We've got all these other colors. What was that backed by? It wasn't backed by a guy like me, an industry making frogs and doing this. The cannabis industry backed the glass pipe movement. They bought glass pipes. Glass blowers were all finally having, financial gains. What did they do? They went into making color right after that. Who supported that? The glass pipe makers. They weren't making all this color initially because guys that were making ponies and dolphins were running in saying, I need more color. I've got a $5,000, $10,000 order. So what does that transpire into? It transpires into, now we have color. Oh, wow. We can make colored marbles in borosilicate glass. We can make color pendants. It was because of Bob Snodgrass that everybody's making colored marbles. Everybody's making colored pendants. It was him that inspired color makers like, North Star and all these other places to say, hey, we got to make some color for these pipe makers, blowing up a whole new industry and a whole new artistic movement.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, and so it's exciting, because sometimes people don't articulate it right and they don't put the story together right. And so I felt like through the years of doing, like I said, my book and this and that, living around all these glass blowers, also being at the Saturday market. So I've been at the Saturday market here in Eugene for 20 years. If you come to Eugene, people will say, oh, there's a guy down there on the courthouse. He's been there for 20 years. Well, that's why Bob Snodgrass partially moved to Eugene. And so there's another connection there between, my family and Bob's, because we grew up at the Saturday market too. And it was kind of a direct result from him moving to Eugene, or I wouldn't have never done the Saturday market.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it's fascinating that you're still doing the markets like that, which is, I preach all the time on here. It's like if you have a chance to go work the little farmer's market on a Sunday just to get out there to sell some pendants and some little hummingbirds that you're making, just something else that's not a pipe, because you can't always sell pipes at the farmer's market, It's going to give you a chance to learn how to market yourself and make things that are not pipes also on top of it all.
Well, and you know what? This is the crazy thing, Jason, is that for 30 years you couldn't sell down at the Saturday market is on the courthouse block, so you couldn't sell for 30 years. Well, 4 or 5 years ago, me and Dave Winship from Glasscraft went and lobbied, and we went to the board of directors, and with the Calabash story, actually Dave said, hey, Eli, I think if you come down there, I think we could pass this together. I went down there, we passed it. I had been selling glass there, for 15 years. I always wondered, okay, well, I can't make another hummingbird. I make armadillos. I do marbles. What else could I make to really make my business explode down at the market? Once pipes got passed, I started doing an average of $400 or $500 a day extra.
Hell yeah.
For the last 4 years. So, kind of going back, and this is about Pipetown, but I am in Pipetown, and our group is Pipetown. So the deal is that I made pipes in the beginning like crazy, and then I got away from them once I started learning from a Walt Disney Glassblower, Lewis Wilson, and some other people more of this artistic stuff, because I felt like there was a more of a niche market. And in my town, 6,000 glassblowers, I felt like it was saturated. And at the time when I first started doing glass, I wasn't thinking worldwide. I was thinking, okay, I got to sell a piece in my town, and so I'm not going to make pipes. Well, about 5 years later, I start making pipes again, but I don't sell them to stores. I only sell them at the Saturday market.
Fascinating. Huh.
So, yeah, and then I sell hummingbirds and octopus and all that kind of stuff as my main business all over the country, all over the world. And then it makes this really unique thing for me to still have that one thing in glass where I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this little unique pipe. What happened actually, once I started making pipes again, I started getting like $10,000 to $50,000 in orders, and I couldn't keep up on my hummingbirds. And all of these animals was just a little more lucrative for me, and less time in making it for the cost and all that stuff you do is in a business. But going back to Pipetown, I was really lucky to have Joaquin from Blazing Heart Productions, because he could listen and we could collaborate together. And he had this, I hate to say it, but it's like, it was almost like two magical moments where we had because just like doing a collaboration in glass.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, dude.
Yeah. You never know what's going to turn out.
Yeah.
So this was just something where you had two people that just really both hit the mark, and, it's just a great film. I could start kind of talking a little bit about the film as far as, there's 16 glass blowers in it. It showcases the lifestyle of a glass blower in Eugene, their trials and tribulations we've got Ham, Deline, Julie Riggs, we've got H-Bomb, we've got Bondu, Mike Philippot, Corey Davey. And so there's a bunch of old school glass blowers, and then we have a bunch of young glass blowers that are in there. And it really showcases, how the glass pipe got started and inspired here in Eugene with the story of Bob Snodgrass. And so and I know you've seen it, and it's just, there's just a bunch of different elements through the whole film that really do, they're pretty impactful.
Well, what I think is interesting too is that it comes from the perspective of Joaquin as a documentary interviewing the artists. So he doesn't have a perspective of being in the scene. He has a perspective of an outside person with curiosity about the scene. So he's able to bring out some stuff out of the interviewing the artists and sharing their stories that they may not share with, say, with another glassblower. I mean, they might, but it's still they're being asked questions that aren't the common maybe questions coming from someone like Joaquin, which I think is pretty rad. And the traveling and just the style of the film too, the way it's done. And it's interesting too to seeing, like you're saying, with the evolution of the trials and tribulations, where like early on there was maybe like 5 of y'all making pipes in Eugene, so you guys had the market. Next thing you know, there's like 1,000, and then like you're saying, there's like a 6,000 artist email list that's eventually, and you can't even sell your own glass within Eugene because it's so saturated. So then you got to go back to hitting the road again, like we used to do back in the day. It's kind of this full circle and the cycle of the glass industry. And now we have trade shows, but you still have to go hit the road. You still got to go travel around and hit the shops. So it's it's fascinating.
And it's that evolution. The evolution of our glass life, like me and you, and those guys that worked for Disney, or the guys that just worked at the little malls and they did, the stitch work and all that. Hey, we all know they all made a little pipe for themselves. Some of them, I mean, they knew what pipes were and stuff, but it was this guy, Bob Snodgrass, who started making those color changing pipes. He was going to Grateful Dead. He was inspiring that culture that was using marijuana. And next thing you know, even guys like, you could say, Lewis Wilson and, all these other guys, we know they had made pipes before, we know they made pipes, but they weren't the ones that really stood up, like I said earlier, with the torch and said, hey, And I don't think Bob necessarily thought that either, going back to you saying he was humble, but he did pick up, that torch and run with it. Back in the 80s, imagine, the glass pipe was considered a meth pipe by authorities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's sketchy for him to do that in the 80s and 90s. I mean, he was risking a lot. So that's another reason, like, he had balls. He had balls that were like, he was brave. And so somebody had to do that. And it's like that in any kind of industry that's when something illegal, from moonshine to, bootleggers, all that kind of stuff. There's those guys kind of behind the scenes. They're like, dude, this isn't right. Like, we're smoking marijuana. So yeah, it's great that, once again, Joaquin, you're right. He's an outside source. He had 6 years of footage that he had shot of the glassing because he worked for Glasscraft.
Right.
So he had all this footage. He had footage of Bob. And then, of course, we were going out to Las Vegas, and I brought him out there to the Glass Vegas show. And, he was able to work for Glass Vegas. And, we told Glass Vegas, like, hey, we're going to come out and shoot Glass Vegas. They paid Joaquin, and we said, hey, we're going to use some of this footage, too, for our Snodgrass interview. So people, I think that sometimes we do glass and we know, like, what it takes to make that. And you see guys like Banjo making a piece, and you're like me and you, we really know what it takes to make that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And this film is just the same kind of concept, the same thing as making like a piece that Banjo makes, kind of like that. It's like, the outside world, but that aren't glass blowers, they look at a Banjo piece. They not always, these people really understand how complicated it is to make that.
Yeah. All the things that can go wrong.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I think about. Like, oh my God, all the things that could have gone wrong with that motherfucker.
Yeah, could have cracked, and that goes back to, like, me and Joaquin working together. The miracle of it. Well, I've got to say one big, huge thing. My brother Josh helped a lot on the film, and one of the saints, the angels that we had for this film is a guy named Greg Lafrance.
Yeah.
And Lafrance Studios, he's out in Las Vegas, and he had, the same thing. He knew that we had a really good story, so he helped fund this story. I got with Greg and said, hey, Greg, we've got a really good story here. We'd love for you to be a part of it. You've obviously, been in glass for the last 5-7 years. I know his passion because I work with Greg and blow glass with him. And I knew that Greg would get behind us. And so with those elements all together, because something like this, you can't do it all by yourself.
No.
So you have to work with people. You have to get along, just like when you do a collaboration in glass. And so Pipetown USA was really just a great collaboration from 4 guys that really put their heart and soul into it, that said, hey, we're not going to give up. Yeah, we had a lot of little, you could say little semi-fights or disagreements or whatever through this thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what it takes to make something really good.
Yeah, that's when everybody's passionate about a project, is when everybody's got that opinion and heads butt eventually. It happens.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And so...
go on.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think what's also fascinating with this is that you guys not only cover the history of Eugene, but you also cover somewhat of the history of glass, and going back to the tie-ins and like the concepts. Because like when Joaquin and I were talking, and I've talked with this other people, like Eugene's like the mecca in America for glass blowing, and it seems like it's not necessarily for glass blowing; it's for the pipe culture. Is like that's where the mecca is. And it's where like maybe Washington could be like the mecca for glass or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's just
right.
Kind of,
totally.
It's just kind of interesting to see it. But what I think is for me the most fascinating is looking at the 20 years that I've been in this culture, the 25 years ish that this culture has existed, and that we have enough stuff that's growth in a sense that has created history within this industry that we can now document this stuff. And it's better to document it now instead of like 100 years from now, where a lot of this information could potentially get lost. You know, the people that like Bob Snodgrass, he's not gonna be around forever, so we got a ton of footage of him. We got a lot of him talking and sharing a story, and you know, it's cool that you guys were able to do this with him, and then share everybody else's story that's in there that are, you know, generational. Like I'm a second generation Snodgrass glassblower, and I can say that, you know.
Yeah.
Just in the Bob Snodgrass family tree, and I would love to see, like, I think maybe you and I had talked about this in the last interview, but to see like a true family tree of this culture, it would take forever to put together. But like, you know, you could put 1,000 people on a page that creates this arc, and Snoddy's up there at the very top of this whole thing.
Dude, you just came up with a great idea. You know, that's who knows? Like, this is a great idea. I could make a tree for Snodgrass and have him write names down. I mean, let's get it from the guy,
Yeah.
and Hugh and Cameron and these guys who really know it. That would be a cool thing, just to see and showcase that trickle effect, and really do go back to this grassroots story, you know, and really even document a little bit more, because Pipetown USA, once again, an awesome film, but we didn't go in and dissect just Bob. You know, we didn't go in. We made this about all his stuff that he did, and really also just about everybody else who was affected from it, like somebody that I didn't mention earlier, JBD, Jerome Baker, Jason Harris, who was part of the whole Operation Pipe Dreams,
yeah.
who made $4 million one year. You know, they pulled in $4 million. I mean, that was a direct result from Snodgrass teaching somebody. And so having the Eugene Glass School, which I was a part of, which I won a few times, and I got second and third place through the years of the Eugene Glass School, that also I pretty much, you know, owned by Sahid and Jason, which was Jerome Baker. You know,
right.
So it was a huge, one of the very first lamp working glass competitions. And so when we talked about earlier series, Pipetown USA was originally to do this cool little, you know, documentary on Snodgrass and Eugene and all that. But of course, at one time we said, dude, we can't get all of this information in one film. Like, this could be a series. And so guess what, Jason? I got really lucky, and I work with a company who sponsors one of the shows on Netflix, Blown Away.
Mm-hmm.
So we gave Pipetown USA to the producer of Blown Away, and they love it. And so right now, I'm just waiting for, you know how media is and TV and radio and all that. It takes time. You know, it's a slow process. And so right now I'm just waiting for the next move. This thing's going to get on Netflix. And if it doesn't get on Netflix, you'll see it on Apple. You'll see it on Hulu. You'll see it on Amazon, because it really is one of the first glass documentaries. And I know you've seen a lot of them, and so have I. But there's only a few that I've ever seen that could even make it to Netflix. And this is one of them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And the length of it, too, is it's a good length. You know, and kind of going to the Blown Away thing, like they could have done it differently, but the fact that they had that on Netflix as a competition for glass, period, is huge. And it's a huge step, you know, in terms of laying a foundation for the glass culture to get recognition through a big media platform. Because I hear it all day at work, you know, people coming in, hey, that you know, but I can just cut them off because I know what they're going to fucking say to me, you know. And I give them my opinion about it, and then I just tell them, hey, I think the fact that you guys now have seen this, you've been exposed to this glass world, and it's caused interest. Again, you know, I can go back to Del Chihuly being a huge catalyst into bringing interest into glass, into our culture, and in America as a society in general, and you know, and the pipes being an offshoot of the subculture within the glass world and the cannabis community. But it's still like this interest for glass in general. Hence why you can go do a farmer's market and make a living selling what you're selling. You know, it's
right.
You know, and it all stems from a couple different people out there, and Bob Snodgrass being one of the influencers.
Oh, big time. And so, you know, going back to Pipetown USA, the American shot glass, the contemporary shot glass, this was this was just a big project for me because, once again, I write the book on why people don't make shot glasses anymore. It gets sponsored by North Star for $10,000. We start a movement. We have all these people commissioned to make a glass to push the shot glass. And I find out about the machine. The machine in 1905, which is my next book. I'm just going to say this real quick. It'd make 243 shot glasses, light bulbs, thermometers, beakers, milk bottles, ketchup bottles. You didn't package ketchup in a hand-blown bottle before the machine. And so what does that mean? That means this whole project all kind of played together for me because at one point I understood that, okay, part of the reason that Bob Snodgrass was able to bring back the pipe in this niche market is because they never made a pipe machine.
Mm-hmm.
They made shot glass machine. They made milk bottle machines. So nobody, of course, was going to make those anymore. Today, Jason, they make 5 million milk bottles an hour. They make
crazy.
5 million light bulbs an hour. They make every single glass object 5 million an hour. They never made a pipe machine. It's why we have this niche market, that we have this industry.
Yeah.
So this is all part of the project. It's in my next book. It's why Dale Chihuly existed. It's partially why Dale Chihuly could do what he did is because they made a machine. It shut down the world of glass. Even over in Murano, they quit blowing glass for making all your prescription jugs. Every container was stopped. And that's when Murano actually turned into this more of a touristy thing.
Right.
And and so what I'm getting at is if it wasn't for Dale Chihuly, since the machine shut down 300 glass shops just on the East Coast and in that area, if it wasn't for Dale Chihuly bringing glass back to America, how did he bring it back? He showed people how to blow glass and started a movement again from the Italians to showcase this cool studio glass movement that was in the home. Well, in 1905 and all the way to really about the 1930s, there were still glass houses all over America. And when Dale Chihuly brought it back and showed more of the art aspect of it,
mm-hmm.
was a real. He's considered a national treasure. And so without Dale Chihuly, I said Bob might be the most influential glass artist of all time. I really put him right with or maybe just ahead of Dale Chihuly. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because Chihuly exposed people to glass in an art form in a sense, and started the whole conversation of is glass a craft or an art. But then Snoddy
Right.
comes in and really finds and as a foundation for a subculture within the glass world. Hence, this podcast. I know she started this podcast for the pipe industry, but then I love glass in general, so I want to talk about just glass in general and share, other types of glass art on here besides just the pipes. But it's all still, for me, my foundation. I'm a piper at heart. I work over at the Mouse House. I'm creating, characters in glass and doing what I'm doing, but I still come home and I still make pipes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's all connected. We're all connected, this whole glass thing. So, 100 years ago, that's a crazy thing. 100 years ago, it was average and normal to have the whole family blew glass.
Right.
That's what they did. The two brothers and the dad went to the glass shop every day and they blew glass. It was considered having a better job than, a construction worker or a mill worker or a metal worker. Glass was this magical thing. And so, it's just this super cool thing. And so 100 years later, when me and my brothers started blowing glass, this is crazy, but it was 3 brothers. And I found out, I looked everywhere, and that was our marketing strategy back then. It wasn't exactly what we made. We made some cool stuff, but we promoted it's 3 brothers that make glass because there wasn't a lot of families in America blowing glass together.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially doing pipes.
Yeah.
And so when I say it's all part of the project, this machine shut down the history of glass blowing families blowing glass together. And 100 years later, I find this unique thing that it's only, we have this glass family that blows glass together.
Yeah.
It's because of the machine. It's shut down. And so, the whole the whole thing that Snodgrass started was also, and he says it in Pipetown USA, the secrets of glass. The secrets of glass have been exposed, and people are telling it. Well, back in the day when they were even making the machine, what happened was they found out that the machine kept breaking down. This is a Kiva Ford story that Kiva Ford told me this. So what was going on is that the machine was shutting down and they didn't know why. So they came in, they found out that glassblowers were throwing wrenches in the machine.
Oh, interesting.
And so, and so the machine kept breaking down. I mean, you could imagine, like, if somebody made a pipe machine that was making 243 pipes every minute and we were working there, we might throw a wrench in that machine too.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's exactly what happened. And so what happened, Jason, is and this is going back to, this conspiracy that me and you have talked about before, is that when they made the machine and they took over the glass industry, every single item in the world, from a thermometer to a petri dish to a lens to a light bulb to a radio bulb, a TV bulb, they also took and kept and held back from us for 100 years the secrets of glass.
Mm-hmm.
So this is cool. We're also learning all these secrets of glass and what it does. And what do me and a guy like you do? We go out and we study the things that glass do, and we bring them to people, and they're amazed. They say, wow, I didn't know that the number one battery in the world was a glass battery.
Right.
But they're using them in the military, and they have bacteria in the glass battery that just keep reforming and structuring, and they multiply, and you have this energy source. They're using it in naval ships. They're using it out at sea. It's the number one battery in the world. It's a glass battery. It's crazy. So the things that glass do that people don't know about.
Yeah. While we're saying that earlier, I was thinking about, like, the manufacturers and the glass industry through the Midwest, like the Blinkos and those companies that made houseware and stuff. And Blinko became a household name through, like, the public television stations, and they were doing fundraisers and stuff for public television and showcasing the industry that was Blinko and the manufacturers of houseware. Whether it was a collectible item or something you can cook out of. Corning comes along, they changed the glass industry in a sense in the manufacturing process. But then the pipe industry comes in and kind of revitalizes the glass scene and then expands it and kind of saves the scientific side of things, because these manufacturers, they were making manufacturing raw materials anyways for the scientific community, but stuff that's machine made isn't necessarily going to be using a case of 1-inch heavy wall, and there's thousands of pipe makers out there now that for the last 15 years-ish or longer been helping support and supply the Kimballs and the Cymaxes and the Cornings and the Pyrex, companies out there that manufacture. A lot of them now are, unfortunately, overseas. I get cutting costs and stuff for manufacturing. But still, it's also spawned these little sub-communities and sub-businesses of color, and you have 2 big brands that come out, and then a third brand, and then there's these wars and stories, which I've been doing a ton of research on. And then you have these little boutiques that come out, and now you have even more little boutique companies that are manufacturing amazing, high-quality, heavily saturated color that it's insane, man. It's to look back, 20 years ago we had 12 colors, and now we have like 400 plus colors. We've had this palette that we've all dreamt about, and we've seen the soft glass artists use for centuries that we now have access to in our glass. All stem from this little pipe, and it's fun to see, like, the gas conferences or the small glass community colleges or Corning even allowing the pipe to become a demonstrated piece by an artist that comes in, like Salt, or Micah Evans.
Oh yeah, and they've and things all kind of collide together at the same time. I sent Corning Pipetown USA. We sent it to them a few months ago, and of course, like you said, they've been more open to showcasing pipe makers and having a pipe in the museum. And then, of course, right after I gave them a film, they did a story also on Snodgrass, right away. And you could just see everybody's opening up to the Snodgrass story. And so just like the telephone's created and this light bulb's created. You got 8 people on the patent list. So it's been time to do the Snodgrass story for a long time. And the world is opening up to it. They're seeing more of really what this industry is about. You can go to pipetownusa.com. You can digitally download the film or you can order the film. And so that's one thing I know we didn't really have set up when you interviewed Joaquin.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you brought that up.
It's available. People can see it. They can learn about the industry. They can learn about the history of the industry and just kind of get this tidbit of information that I tell people, go grab some pot, go grab some popcorn, some Milk Duds, and some jujubes, and just sit down and watch this film because it's definitely, we've had a lot of great feedback, and I mean even Neil Young viewed the film and loved it.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say, dude. Like for myself, like I'm going to show my kids this. I've actually brought it to my daughter's house several times, and I keep forgetting to bring my DVD player because she doesn't have one since everything she has is all digital. But, but it's for parents for those of us who are parents that are pipe makers or glass blowers. This is a great introduction to be like, hey, this is why I do this, to your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's you're right, and that's part of the film too, where it's, hey, I actually start crying because during that moment, and I could start crying right now because that's how passionate, that's how much I love glass, and of course it has to do with my family. But I raised my whole, all my kids, 3 kids, my brother's 4 kids, my older brother, my mom, and we've all lived a life financed by glass for the last 20 years. Every pair of shoes, every milkshake and cheeseburger, and every single pencil, every single pair of shorts, raft, Barbie doll, everything that's been paid for in glass.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a blessing, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a blessing. It's a gift. I feel grateful. And the cool thing about this film, for people that are listening, this is a story that we can all share together. That's all of ours. It's not. I don't consider it. This was ours or anything like that. This is a story, and that's why we had 16 glass blowers in there, is because we wanted to make this about all of us. We wish we could have fit another 50 or 100 glass blowers in there to tell the whole story. So anybody out there listening, let's get this film out there to somebody who can really see this thing and say, wow, like, we need to get this out to the masses because this is a real American story.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and to continue the story as well, to then continue a series in a sense of this and go across the country as it, like we said, like with the family tree, to see where it expanded, going from there to the West Coast, to the East Coast, to Florida. It'd be really neat to see.
That's the dream. The dream is maybe Netflix or HBO or High Times. Who knows? Like, maybe someone picks this up and says, hey, let's do a little mini series on this. I mean, I think it would be more captivating than just about anything. I research all kinds of stuff. And so all these cannabis documentaries that are already on Netflix, I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to be biased here because we made it, but I haven't seen one, maybe just a couple, that have to do with cannabis that are as good as this cannabis show, and mm-hmm. So, yeah, and maybe I'm stretching there a little bit, but it's right up there with something that would be interesting. I mean, I wish there was. I mean, I like I said, I've seen a lot of cannabis shows. I haven't seen one yet that was just like on Netflix that was just and because of the prohibition and stuff, because of the legalization, there's all kinds of cannabis shows being put up on Netflix all the time because it's a huge interest. It's all people talk about. Oh, legal weed, So with that being said, we have we've got a great car to drive down the street. We've got this thing that's a perfect timing for the time that we're in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think those of us that got started, even 10 years ago, really, and got our stuff situated, fine-tune our techniques and crafts and whatever, are in a pretty good position, as long as you're willing to understand the business side of things, within the
Yeah.
the glass world. But the opportunity, times are changing, laws are changing. I had Luke Zimmerman on recently. He's talking about the way just some of these laws are changing, and if people are filing copyrights and trademarks and stuff within the pipe world. It's it's fascinating. It's I don't know, man. It's good timing, I guess, in a sense, for us.
Yeah, it's perfect timing. I mean, we're like we said earlier, we're just super lucky. It's a blessing. We're grateful, and we're living in a life of waking up and enjoying your life. You actually, once again, it says it in the film. We don't go to work to punch a time clock. We do this because we're having fun.
Yeah.
Cool hand Sue's and everybody, and so there's once again so many different, people saying stuff that attribute to the film. That's things like this that we're talking about, and it just goes on and on. In fact, the first time I watched the film, I was like, yeah, that's good. I watched it again, and I watched it again, and I thought, and it absorbed, wow, that really does have a lot. And one thing that I liked that Bondu said, most of these people that are making pipes, like me, when I first got started, the pipe passed around in a circle, and I saw the glass pipe, and I was like, oh my God, that is the coolest fucking thing. Where was this made? And so I had to know, where was this pipe made? And so that brought me into glass. And it was just, it started this huge, this dream. Sometimes pipe dreams do come true. So I didn't have any artistic training or anything. My brother was a potter. My mom was an artist. But a lot of guys, they didn't have any artistic training. And so Bondu says these guys were picking themselves up from their bootstraps and going and trying to make, something in art, something in glass, and so they really did have to pick themselves up from their own bootstraps. And it just shows how strong some of these guys are, getting what they want from just going out and working in the shop for 12 hours a day because they just love and enjoy the movement and the meditation, the soul searching destination that glass gives you.
Yeah, and the life lessons and all that shit. It's always fun when I talk to guests at work, and I get asked a lot, like, where'd I learn this at? And I tell them my backyard, and they think I'm fucking crazy, but I'm like, yeah, for real. And they're like, well, how'd you learn this? I'm like, oh, I learned by doing. And I always refer to it like riding a bike, but you got to get on the bike, and you start off with training wheels, and eventually you can ride with no hands, and you're jumping off curbs and stuff.
And that's hilarious. In my backyard, I'm going to remember that next time somebody asks me. For years and years and years, my first 10 years, I never told people really. They say, how did you get into glass? And I'd say, oh, my older brother taught me, and da-da-da. And they ask me now, and I tell them the truth. I say, you know what? I got into glass because I smoked a lot of pot.
Yeah.
I smoked a lot of pot, and I saw somebody, and I knew all my friends smoking pot would buy this pipe. And so we don't want to go into, a drug cast here, because we start opening people's minds up with the drugs that you take. The vehicle is the glass pipe for marijuana. And so some of these, obviously, as we know, mushrooms, LSD, marijuana, they open up your pineal gland, they open up your third eye, and that's when you start to visualize, and you start to see colors, and you start to see, you start to dream more intensely. Maybe something that was taken away from us on purpose. I don't know, but either way, that's a whole nother conversation. But I know that the people that do, sometimes, in this culture, they do expand their minds. So it's an eye-opening experience when you get into the pipe industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this film really does showcase not only the origins, but the expansion of knowledge, and not being afraid to share things. And I think one of my quotes that I love from the documentary you guys did was just the whole idea of you're not making glass, you're making glass makers. And as a teachers, as we are, and it's I think those that teach this stuff not only are teaching the material, but they're teaching life lessons, along the way.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, definitely.
It's totally nuts. You learn so much, and I tell people many times that I shaped the glass and then it shaped me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And it really did.
Yeah, I think it's fun,
really
man.
Did.
And I'm definitely excited to get you back on here, like we talked pre-show, and talk about some stuff, because there's a lot of topics that we touched on here that I want to expand upon, and one of them's being the whole, early on as we got interested in glass was because we saw somebody with this crazy fucking looking crazy pipe, and it seems like as part of the issues with today's generational gap that we have right now is with legalization of cannabis, and a lot of people that are buying cannabis are going to dispensaries and they're buying a cheap ass pipe from the dispensary, and they're not becoming knowledgeable and getting the origins of where this piece came from, because the dispensary isn't really sharing this knowledge. Like we got back in the day when we go to our buddy's house and he'd have some glass, he'd have some weed, and he would share the story of the glass pipes that he had, and maybe had a couple for sale, and would tell us who the artist was. And we got all this knowledge, then this knowledge isn't being continued and carried on as it was. So doing a film like you guys are doing is really helping, again, to carry on this knowledge to a new generation. Because look at Degenerate Art. Degenerate Art spawned an entire generation of pipe makers. Just got all hyped up about it, And so I think this documentary is going to hype some people up. But I think more than the hype, I think what it is doing is it's giving you an education on where we all came from.
Right. And I tell people, if you like Degenerate Art, you're going to love Pipetown USA.
Yeah.
Because once again, it's something that, Degenerate Art didn't really all the way go really super deep into Bob. It showcased the heady movement, and it was a platform for us. And so and that's why I said earlier, if there's anybody that listens to this can understand that after they watch this film, that we do have, there's so many things that are, like you said, going into buying Chinese pipes instead of ours. We've got the catalyst, the product to get to America to say, hey, this is the life of a glassblower. Like, support these glassblowers, support the knowledge that goes behind this, because glass is like an onion. You peel it and you peel it, and I got another layer, and then you peel it again. There's so many things. People ask me, have you mastered glass? I do interviews here and there. Are you considered a master glass blower? What? No way. I said, there's so many things to learn about glass. You couldn't actually go to school and really give somebody a master's degree, because there's so many different things in glass that it's what gives us technology. It's what is, like I said earlier, it's what gives us, to look 1,000 years into the future. It's what made religion. It's what defied religion. They say it was Galileo was actually the glass lens that defied the Pope. And so it was a glass maker that Galileo would work with. And yeah, it's all these cool things about glass that, really showcased in Pipetown USA as a precursor for what we're talking about, these other stories that we could get into and write a whole movie on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So, yeah. And I know a lot of people, they'll hear the excitement in my voice. It just comes naturally. It's almost like, I tell people, it's kind of like when you get into glass, it's like putting a steroid into a bodybuilder, and I could flex and I could build muscle mass and I could pick things up and I could feel confident. The more I got into glass and the more I learned, it was a passionate love thing. It was a soul searching thing. I would find and connect with who I am and what I was here to do. And glass did that for me. Not everybody is lucky enough to really find that. And that's where you hear this passion coming from. From me, from you, from all kinds of glass artists who really have found their dream.
Yeah, well said, man.
And yeah, sometimes pipe dreams come true.
Absolutely.
So,
hell yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this interview. I know we've covered a lot, and I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that you were able to do this. And just like the vehicle that you provide, and the more and more we can get your radio station out there. I know you've done a lot already, but the more and more, same thing, like Pipetown USA, and that's why me and you hit it off so well, is that you've already been doing this for years and really telling people about the industry and about the things in glass and showcasing certain people who made glass and what they did. And me and you, with the connection that we have, we're just another, I think, team. And we talked about this a year ago or two, but not everything happens all at once. Yeah. I mean, they say it does, if you study Hinduism or Buddhism,
right.
Either way, I think that looking through the glass lens, I can see me and you on some kind of, some projects together about, telling some stories and stuff. So
yeah, dude, I completely agree.
Again, just want to thank Wise Guys Radio for sure.
Hell yeah. Yeah, my pleasure, man. And I'll make sure for everybody listening, I'll have all the links in the show notes where you can get the digital download or purchase this. I can get a physical copy of it. And you guys are going to Vegas to do some showcasing and premiering. Are you guys going to Glass Vegas this year?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm glad that you said that, because I've had a booth at Glass Vegas for years and years. I helped start Glass Vegas. I was the guy that called the people who own Glass Vegas and say, hey, we got to start a real glass show. And so I did Glass Vegas for years. This year I wasn't going to do it. And then the film came out, and I was like, I was always going to go to Glass Vegas. I just wasn't actually going to get a booth because I just get too busy doing all this other stuff. And so Glass Vegas is building a theater with inside the show that's soundproof. They bought a popcorn machine and candy. They're running it on a 24-hour loop while the show's open. So every hour you can go in and watch Pipetown USA.
Hell yeah.
And then we're going to go on tour with this film. And so we'll be showing it at places like Smitty's Smoke Shop, and we'll show it at Melt. And I'm talking to the Michigan Glass Project right now, in fact. And so a bunch of little spots that we'll kind of be touring around like a band and kind of showing this film at the biggest glass events, and hoping to get this film as, something, let's say, like you're in Amsterdam and it's the biggest cannabis show in the world. I found a way that, maybe we could play this Pipetown show at the cannabis event, or maybe at the High Times event. What does that do? That gets all of the glass industry into, that clientele, that they can see the story. And so once again, the story, the platform, and the promotions of this, hopefully will bring the glass industry. And that's what we wanted to do, all of us, bring the glass industry into every home in America of what we do, because every other industry does that, but the glass industry is just starting to do it. So yeah, I'm really excited to go to Glass Vegas. I want to thank our sponsors. We had Lampwork Supply sponsor us at the gold level, Glass Vegas, East Coast Melt, and Lafrance Studios. And so without all those guys, we wouldn't have been able to do this. But I just want to give a shout out to them, Lampwork Supply, Glass Vegas, and East Coast Melt, and Lafrance Studios, because they just been a great sponsorship for us and gave us a backbone.
Yeah, man. I'll make sure I put all their information too in the show notes for everybody. Check them out and give them some follows on Instagram and what have you. Absolutely, brother.
Well, cool, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Right on, man. Well, thanks again, dude, and I look forward to seeing you in the future and talking to you.
Hell yeah, brother. Have a great night.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care, man. Peace. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Eli Mazet. Definitely go check out all the links I have in the show notes. Go to pipetownusa.com for further information on this documentary. I highly recommend it. It's very fascinating, whether you're a pipe maker, interested in glass, a glass artist, whatever you want to call yourself, and you're in this glass world. I definitely highly recommend this documentary. So thanks again to all the sponsors, everybody that was on here, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Love you so much. Take it easy. See ya.